This foot bath could have killed me, and it's not the only Amazon product that could have done so. One evening, I was using this foot bath, and then suddenly I hear a loud pop, and then the smell of burnt electronics quickly followed. Thankfully, my feet weren't in the foot bath at the time. They easily could have though, and that's 120 volts from the wall directly into my feet. That probably doesn't end well, right? I've designed products in the past, and the total negligence to basic safety standards in this product makes my stomach sick. I'm going to take this foot bath apart to show you why it failed so catastrophically. I also want to test to see if this device could cause serious bodily harm, or even, in the worst case, death. And then I'm going to show you ways to improve the design of this product so that it could be safer for the consumer market. And finally, I'm going to give you some tips on how to avoid buying garbage like this off of Amazon, or any online retailer for that matter. Let's take this over to the workbench to see what's inside. Before I ruin this thing, I'm going to do one more test. I'm going to fill it with water and see if there's any AC voltage running through the water. Oh, the things I do for you guys. Doesn't seem like there's any voltage in the water. That's good news. So let's see what's inside. There's a label here. 300 watts, 120 volts AC, 60 hertz, made in China. Notice the lack of any safety standards on this device? Like, literally nothing at all. These standards exist to protect you from products like this. Upon taking the bottom off, I discovered several devices, which included 120 volt AC power lines that went just about everywhere, the mode select switch, a solenoid pump that makes air bubbles for the device, and, most importantly, the heating element, which might have been just a spool of wire that heats up the device, or a Peltier pad, which all that does is convert electrical energy into thermal, either for cooling applications or for heating applications, latter in this case. Oh, okay. So there was thermal detection here. This device is a thermal switch. When it reads in a temperature that's over 150 degrees Celsius, the switch opens, creating a very simple feedback loop. However, 150 degrees Celsius is really hot, considering you shouldn't be in a hot tub over 40 degrees Celsius. That got me thinking. I might do a water test, like a leakage test on the top, because now that I'm looking at these guys right here, they're already corroded. This is basically new, and I don't know where that water would be coming from. How is it getting in here? The fact that there's any water in this cavity at all is scary, because we're talking about with your mains is just exposed here. If it can flood to some degree, because just under the right circumstances, I could see it actually shocking an individual without blowing your breaker, because North American standard, we don't have what's called GFICs on all of our outlets, which will trip the individual circuit if it sees an overage of current through that. But because we don't have that, theoretically, might be enough to do some damage to somebody. That's unfortunate. If you've had a scary experience with an Amazon product in the past, please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to tase that like button and electrocute that subscribe button while you're down there. So essentially this mechanism just transfers the heat from this guy out to this outer shell, and that's how it heats the water. And you can tell it's safe because there's a little silicone gasket here that goes right into there, and then that gets tightened down with screws that should all have their own torque value, but that's going right into plastic. So manufacturing could install this in such a way that the seal doesn't make proper contact and doesn't have proper, essentially, tension on each one of these bolts, which would allow it to leak some water. And leaking some water, not a terrible thing, but over time, that water leaks more and more, and that could be really bad. This is really sketching me out right now in terms of how this was designed. And the fact that as I was using it, what I noticed was the towel that I ended up putting under the device is soaking wet. I wonder where all that water is coming from. I guess the next thing I should do is a leak test. The basis for this leak test was very simple. I put the foot bath on 4 pieces of paper, and if it leaked at any point, you would see it in the paper. But it didn't really go as planned. I ended up testing it with a whole bunch of different scenarios, including on and with bubbles and on a towel. And they all came back the same, dry. Which was surprising, but it was a good thing. However, there were 2 other locations water could get in, the light and the switch. So I took it to the bench to do more testing. So I did a little bit more digging, and I noticed that these 2 features might not be water resistant. So what I decided to do was kind of pour water this way down it to see if water could get in from the backside. And what was really interesting was I could see water droplets on the inside of this light, and when I took it apart, I noticed that this cavity was full of water and that there looked like scorch marks, almost like rust. But then I looked kind of in the bottom, and I noticed that the brown marks before were somewhat close to where this light sits. And I do recall when the loud pop happened that the light did flicker. So I think it was probably the light shorting up, which fortunately for us is actually connected to line and ground. So that is still 120 volts. So if you fill your tank up past this line, which you do have a max line here, but it's very faint, and not to mention people's feet are of different sizes. So if you have somebody with big feet and they put it in, of course, the water displaced is going to go a little bit higher, and if you just cusp the bottom of this light here, you could have water running directly into 120 volts if the device is on. So that's where the major leaking failure was coming from. But that's really just unfortunate because that's just such an easy fix. All you would have to do to really fix that is just silicone it. Just put a mountain of silicone caulking in there and then just seal it in, screw it down, and Bob's your uncle. You're done for the day. I wasn't able to get this switch off, which is probably a good thing. Oh, maybe it will come off now. Nope. I trust that this device doesn't leak as much because on the backside here, it looks like it mates pretty well to the underside. And what's important about here, all of the electricity is in this cavity. It's not on the other side, not like in here where all of the electrical connections are over here, mated past this point here, which means if this floods, that could seriously do some damage. So now that I've debugged this a little bit, phase 2 is how do we solve all these problems? Number 1 of what I'm going to do is silicone seal this little light here so that no water may enter into this cavity in here as well as into the bottom cavity down here. That's a no-brainer. Fix number 2 was to modify all the electronics to make it safer for the end user. Let me walk you through them. So first and foremost, I have this temperature probe on a wire that's going to go and actually sit in the basin and read in water values. And if it gets too hot above a threshold temperature, I'm going to feed that value into this little microcontroller, which is then going to say, okay, turn off the heating element, which is controlled by this little relay here. So now I have protection from the heating element overheating, as well as the water itself overheating. And I also thought, it'd be really cool to have some sort of water detection in the bottom here. So I have a little soil moisture detection device here, and I'm going to mount that to the bottom side, so the black piece of plastic that sits on here, so that if water does start to fill up, it can shut off the circuitry down here, which is a good thing. And one last thing, I'm going to silicone the crap out of everything in here that isn't moving, just to be safe. And one big thing, when I was putting this thing back together, I noticed that there's still a gap there, so I'm also going to silicone this light piece so that water can't even get into the part where I siliconed below, so that this is extra safe now. I was finally able to put everything back together, and after a necessary label change, I was finally able to enjoy my foot bath again, knowing it was a lot safer to use. But now you may be asking, what would all these necessary safety upgrades cost the manufacturer? And ultimately, you, the consumer. So you just saw all the improvements that I made to the foot bath hot tub thingamabob. What would this have cost the manufacturer to put all these things in? Well, a rough estimation of all the components finds me at about $5. $5 times 3, because we use something called the rule of thirds in manufacturing, gives us about a $15 price increase on the Amazon list price. And honestly, that's not so bad considering how many more safety elements go into it to ensure that you don't get seriously injured. Honestly though, with all of the changes I made to it, might not be sufficient. A complete redesign is more in order, where I would rather have the electronics all mounted to the top of the unit in a separate piece that kind of sits over here. That way you can isolate the water from the power more easily. Having all the high voltage electrical components right under the basin with poorly sealed components is obviously not something you want to be doing. Just using more silicone in the first place could have really helped this device. So would you say your life is worth less than $15? I certainly don't think so. Honestly, with a good rebrand, we could charge the same amount for the original device and just call it toaster and bathtub replacement. I know I certainly won't be buying another one of these. So what caused this phenomenon of cheap, easily replicated consumer trash? Why do products like the portable bathtub toaster 9000 exist on Amazon and are highly regarded in the reviews? Is anyone really surprised that most of this is Amazon's fault? For anyone that frequents Amazon, you know that when you search for something and get your results, the first couple of posts all have these unique little tags on them that say sponsored. These are products that are force-fed into your eye line and push the products that you were actually looking for further down on the page. This happens because sellers on Amazon pay lots of money to Amazon to get their ranking higher on the page for certain keywords like headphones or heating pad or just about anything. Amazon's response to the majority of these suppliers is probably something like,
"Oh, I like money."
Depending what you search on Amazon, you could have a single sponsored post or a whole page of sponsored posts. These are often products with very few reviews, but the reviews that they have are overwhelmingly positive. In order to convince you that you weren't actually looking for the other thing, you should buy this thing, because it ranks higher on page results. It's like when you Google something, the first links are probably the most reputable. Except now ads have taken over and you can't trust anything anymore, can ya? Let's think about other big box retailers for a second. Do you trust Best Buy for your next laptop purchase? Well, probably. Why though? Partially, it comes down to Best Buy actually vetting the products that they sell. Some good old quality assurance before they stock this product on the shelves. You also have the advantage of walking into the store and experiencing the product for yourself before you even purchase it. And before you do that, what do you usually do? That's right, you Google it, you read reviews, you watch a video by Linus Tech Tips on whether or not this is a worthwhile investment for your money. You read review after review after review until you can finally come to the conclusion of buy it or don't buy it. Regardless of what you purchase from Best Buy though, probably won't kill you. When it comes to heated bubble foot baths, you don't have much choice. A few sketchy vendors with a few decent reviews sells this product. These are mostly no-name brand vendors and, unlike the case with the laptop from Best Buy, you can only find reviews for these super niche Amazon products on Amazon's website. If the reviews and the product listing exist in the same place, you can bet that sellers are doing everything in their power to skew those results in their favor. So, if you want it, you're gonna have to take the risk. And therein lies the problem. So how can you, the smart consumer, avoid purchasing things like this? I have 4 tips for you. Tip number 1, read the reviews on the product. Look for people who post real pictures of the product and read their honest takes. An immediate red flag should be a comment along the lines of, "Rating 5 stars because I got a full refund." That's usually not a good thing. Why'd they get a refund in the first place? It's actually illegal for any seller to ask you to change your rating after getting a refund. Don't feel obligated to do so. Conversely, also try to ignore review bombs of people saying, "My package didn't arrive on time." That's not a seller issue, that's an Amazon problem. As well as try and ignore reviews that are overwhelmingly positive but have very little to say. Tip number 2, overall number of reviews can also help you vet a product. However, be careful. I've fallen for this trap before. Look at the distribution of review ratings. If reviews consist of some 3 stars, many 4 stars, and a lot of 5 stars, you probably have something legit on your hands. If reviews consist of some 3 stars, many 4 stars, many 5 stars, but a ton of 1-star reviews, well, I would avoid that product like the plague. You can read some of these 1-star reviews if you're in the mood for, I don't know, some entertainment. Tip number 3, see if you can find some YouTube videos of people actually using the product. Make sure that they're not videos from the supplier themselves or anybody that might have been paid off to promote their product. Tip number 4, compare your product to competitors' products in the same category. If not many exist, or they all look kind of similar, consider whether or not you really need this product to begin with. If it looks too good to be true, it usually is. Manufacturers like this have one goal in mind: parting you from your money. This was a huge learning experience for me, and I hope you learned something from this video. I've now changed my ways in how I order online in general, and not just from Amazon. Amazon may be a large contributor to the problem, but this problem exists everywhere. As always, I've been Captain Steel, and I hope you enjoyed your journey.